The first category of drugs that we're going to talk about are the ergot alkaloids, or the ergot drugs. These have been around for quite a long time and have been used with some success in migraine sufferers. When I go over the drugs with you, I will usually give you an example drug that is considered the prototype drug for that particular classification. When it comes to learning drugs, you want to learn them by classification. You don't want to try to learn each individual drug because you will drive yourself crazy and it's too complicated. So we're going to learn drugs by class. You'll learn an example drug. You'll learn how those drugs work. And then you want to learn the exceptions to that rule, because often the authors of textbooks like you to remember the exceptions to the overall rule. So it sounds complicated, but as we get into it, you'll see that it's really not. It's fairly cut and dried. You do have to use a lot of critical thinking to remember what physiologic processes are going on and how the drugs affect those. But as far as learning the categories and the actions and the therapeutic actions, the side effects, the adverse reactions, and many of the other things you have to learn, like interactions and contraindications, all that is fairly cut and dried. So for the ergot alkaloids, our prototype drug is a drug called dihydroergotamine, or DHE45. Dihydroergotamine is the generic name. DHE45 is the chemical name, and they use those interchangeably sometimes. And then Migranal is the trade name. In the ATI book, it covers these over 277 to 280. These drugs primarily treat migraines. That means you take it when you know a migraine is coming on. And the action is to cause vasoconstriction. Now, the reason I have this piece of grain here, this cereal, is that the ergot drugs are derived from a fungus, or the ergot fungus. And this shows the ergot fungus on a piece of rye, a grain that is grown and made into bread and other substances like whiskey, rye whiskey. It's been an ancient grain that's been grown forever. And what happens in especially damp, warm seasons is that this fungus would blow into a field of grain. It would affect the rye, and it ends up with these little black, shriveled grains. And it didn't take long for people who accidentally ate these ergot alkaloids to realize that it had a profound effect on the central nervous system. It actually caused people to almost lose their minds. And there are stories of whole villages who accidentally get their bread or their drinks contaminated with this ergot, and it strongly affects their central nervous system to the point where they hallucinate. They have vasoconstriction, which causes their blood to circulate rapidly as their heart pounds. Blood pressure would go up. It could be fatal in some cases. It could lead to gangrene. And one of the things it does is contract the uterus so that it would cause pregnancy loss in women who were pregnant at any stage. Now, this has ended up being a valuable application because we're able to use these ergot alkaloids to constrict blood vessels when needed. We can use them to stop abnormal bleeding after childbirth. Abnormal hemorrhaging after childbirth has been a killer of newly delivered women for as long as women have been delivered. And they have been able to take the chemical compounds in this fungus, create synthetic forms of those, and give them as injections after childbirth to clamp the uterus down and stop abnormal bleeding. In herbal medications, you'd always have your granny midwife who would treat the townspeople and villagers with various kinds of herbs. And this ergot on the rye was known as something that would contract the uterus, prevent bleeding, get rid of abnormal bleeding after pregnancy loss, and in some cases it would be used as an abortifacient. It wasn't very easy to control. It could be very dangerous, but abortions have been around since the beginning of time, and desperate women would do anything, including taking substances made from these ergot alkaloids because they were so powerful, and they hoped that it would get them out of their dilemma. This is a little rhyme to remember what the ergot alkaloids do, and it will make you numb and cold. So you'll have peripheral vasoconstriction and tingling of the extremities, and they'll be very cold. So it's important, if you're taking a drug that's an ergot, like this one is another prototype drug, ergotamine or ergostat, it will cause extreme vomiting, which, you know, a lot of migraine sufferers suffer from anyway, is vomiting along with their migraines. So in this case, there's a little rhyme here about head, stomach, fingers and toes, and then, you know, severe vomiting from your mouth and nose, which really makes it sound like something you want to take, right? Now, the dihydroergotamine is considered safe at certain times of pregnancy. Ergotamine is not. The ergotamine or ergostat will contract the uterus, whereas migranol will not. This is a case of gangrenous ergotism. This is somebody who did not have really great circulation to begin with, and somehow this person was given an ergot alkaloid. It is a very potent vasoconstrictor, so not everybody can take them. If you've got a person with peripheral vascular disease or diabetes that has inhibited their circulation, they do not need to take these ergots for migraines or anything else, because you can clamp down those blood vessels and they might not recover. So you can see that this person is in a bad way. Their piggy went to market toe is going to snap right off, as is the piggy that stayed home. Probably those could come off in your hand. The piggy that ate roast beef is going to follow shortly. There's still a tiny bit of circulation, but most of the toe is gone. The piggy that had none still has a little circulation. There's still some pinkness in the toes, but you can see that blue, that bluish extending up into the toe. The only toe that looks like it might survive this gangrenous ergotism is the toe that went wee all the way home. So this is a person who is not in a very good way and should not have had this medication. So I don't know what happened with this person, but things are not looking good for the first 3 toes.